Hello, and welcome to Alive or Just Blethering, a podcast where two 30-somethings discuss the music we found and loved growing up. My name is Chris Lavender, and with me is my fellow host, Keith McLeod. Today on Alive or Just Blethering, I'd like to talk about Mirrors by Misery Signals.
Well, good evening to you, Mr. Lavender. How the devil are you?
The devil is treating me fine, Mr. McLeod.
Lovely jubbly.
And how about you?
Yes, one's a little bit tired, Came back from a bit of a trip this afternoon, but fuck me. That's about it. I'm just pretty tired.
Yeah, man. It's been a weekend of just a date. This, it won't get released for a couple of weeks, but for anyone listening home, this is being recorded at the end of the Jubilee weekend.
Fuck the Jubilee weekend, man. Honestly, if I have to make my
Platty-jubes.
If I have to make my feelings absolutely fucking clear, end the monarchy. But that's just me. I'm not here to get political.
I'm in that.
Fucking end it now. But yeah, man, did you celebrate the Platty-jubes? Platty-jubes?
The closest we got is we had a barbecue, and I think someone had a newspaper that they just kind of pinned to the fence with the Queen's face on it.
Oh, cute though. Did you throw a dart at it?
I think it might have got blown over about 10 minutes in, and we didn't replace it.
Okay. So no flag shaggers at your party? No.
Absolutely not. No, not a single one.
No boomers getting a chubby over the Union Jack, huh?
Nah, no butcher's aprons. No, none of that. No bunting.
Well, they're still bunting up in my street, so I'm glad I was in a different country for old Platty-jubes. Not a Union Jack in sight where I was, mate, so thank fuck for that. But we've spent far too long talking about that. Welcome to the pod, everyone. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you are a returning listener, welcome back. Lav is going to take us through his journey with Misery Signals, a band I think I always knew existed, but never, apparently, ever listened to.
And that surprised me, as I think there's a lot of qualities, shall I say, with Misery Signals that I think you may have enjoyed.
Yeah.
A lot of the intricate guitar work, the more technical aspect of the band. I find they're a more technical, heavy band. They're not quite. I wouldn't ever call them progressive by any stretch.
Wikipedia would call them progressive metalcore or melodic metalcore.
Melodic metalcore, I'll 100% give them that. They are one of the most melodic metalcore bands I can probably name that I really got into. There was definitely a vibe for this around 2006 that I remember being a part of. Not just listening to Misery Signals, but there was other bands. I think there was one called For the Fallen Dreams, Destroy the Runner, Life in Your Way. If any of these names are ringing a bell to any of our listeners, give them a shout out. It'd be great to know if anybody else heard of them.
They're not even ringing a bell for me, bud. Sorry.
Nah, never mind. But it was this sort of sound of metalcore breakdowns, but with very nice, I'm going to just use the word nice guitar lines, really soft melodic moments sort of overwoven with them, and then some deep bellowing screams or growls thrown in there for good mix.
I just had to double check an album there, and I maybe should have talked about this album by now. I don't know whether I should talk about it. I know you don't want to talk about it, but you said something along the lines there of, melodic metalcore, or I mentioned melodic metalcore, and you sort of were talking about, how this was one of the first times you sort of heard like those sort of melodies over the heavier music and stuff like that. That immediately brought to my mind Shadows of Security by As I Lay Dying. That was sort of one of the first melodic metalcore bands I remember hearing, and I'm very surprised to realise that album was released in 2005. I don't think I listened to it in 2005.
Oh, I was listening to As I Lay Dying in 2004 when they released Fall of Ideals? No, that was All That Remains.
Frail Words of Collapse, 2003.
Is that the one that starts with the song 94?
Mm-hmm. Let's find out.
I really was a fan of As I Lay Dying, the band that we won't talk about on the podcast, sadly. But for the record, before he tried to kill his wife, I did listen to As I Lay Dying quite religiously, and it was actually at an As I Lay Dying show that we possibly may have crossed paths without even knowing it.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Because, yeah, like Shadows Our Security and An Ocean Between Us, 2007, I think were pretty big for me. Again, it was sort of like, well, I know we're not here to talk about Shadows As I Lay Dying, but it's an episode that we're just probably not going to do out of the fact that, well, Labisi was a bit of a cunt. So, but
So.
that band did have a big impact on me, and they were two albums that I sort of very much was like, they were just a band for me that, you know, that was two albums where I was like, oh, holy shit, this is incredible. This is something I've never heard before. Misery Signals, even now, I don't think they really fit that bill for me. And that's with years of hindsight. You know, I can't fairly quantify that. I can't honestly say if I'd heard Misery Signals in 2006, you know, it wouldn't have been something I'd never heard before. It's definitely something now that it's nothing new, nothing really surprises me. Let's knock it right out the gate. I did enjoy this album. It was a shaky start, but I had some time to listen to it, and I got into it, and there was a lot of stuff on here I enjoyed. But I'm just instantly comparing it to Shadows Our Security, and I just think I still would have went with Shadows Our Security rather than
possibly
maybe leaning towards Mirrors.
I have to say, so this is the first time I've properly listened to Mirrors in a good few years. I really, really like the next album, Controller.
Mm-hmm.
I think Controller is the best Misery Signals album, in my opinion. Mirrors, though, as by the rules that we've been talking about with this was where I discovered Misery Signals. And at that point, they had Mirrors, and they'd released the previous album of Malice and Magnum Heart with a different singer. Similar sort of story to Norma Jean, I think, here, where you go and listen to an older album and it's a different vocalist and they have a totally different sound. The previous vocalist was the right person for that time. Karl Schubach coming in for Mirrors. I think it's because it's the first time they're working with a new vocalist. It feels like they were sort of sticking to the older sort of plan that they had when writing songs, and they hadn't truly adapted to having another brain in the room, a different person, a different body, different vocals style in the room.
Yeah.
And by the next album, because they'd obviously toured extensively between those two dates, between the date he joined and the date of Controller being recorded, I think they knew how to utilise him better. That and Controller was produced by Devin Townsend. That probably helps too.
I was going to say, I just noticed that as well.
I think Mirrors, it has not aged very well. Personally, I struggled to get through it in a single listen. I think it's quite long, and I have to say, I think in hindsight of 20 however many years now, 18 years since this was released? 16 years. My maths is not strongest at the moment. In that time, yeah, I don't think Misery Signals can write an intro.
What makes you say
every
that?
song, because every song I instantly just wanted to skip. I was like, get to the good bit. It took me. It's a definition of a grower, of an album I had to
very much so
listen to repeatedly, and then once I got into it, I was like, yeah, okay, I can get it now. I understand where you're going with this.
Yes. Yeah, it is a bit of a grower, isn't it?
It really struggled to hook me in, and when I was listening to it the first time, I was like, oh God, Keith's gonna fucking hate this.
Yeah, it is a bit of a grower, and that's what I mean by a rocky start. So, the one thing I generally did not get behind on this album was the lead vocals. No offense to Karl Schubach. His growl, his scream, very reminiscent of what we were talking about with Norma Jean, and how it's just a bit of a flat, standard growly vocal that I think doesn't really do very much. So when the first song hit, and it's just that vocal, almost there's not. I don't think there's a lot of vocal diversity in the first song. When that first, my first listening to that, I was like, oh no, this is what this is going to be. Getting through that album, getting past that song, and getting into the other ones, there's a lot more diversity. There's a lot more change. There's different things going on, and I started to enjoy that a lot more. But if this album had just been that vocal the whole way through, just that screamy growl the whole way through, I'd have been bored out of my mind listening.
I think the track ordering doesn't help on this one. Track 2, The Failsafe, is one of my favourite tracks. One of my favourite Misery Signal songs as a whole, not just on this album, but on this album it's a proper standout moment. And that should be track 1. I think it's got more diversity. It would introduce, if this is the first time you've ever listened to Misery Signals, it would be something that you would see them being more melodic and being less aggressive and enjoy. And I think that it would ease you in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think the opening track on Mirrors
Face Yourself.
Face Yourself is a questionable choice of track, given its extremely brash nature.
What you could maybe say there then is maybe these guys wrote, vocalist left, they've got a new guy in, and maybe these guys only wrote 12 songs, 13 songs, for this album, and Face Yourself was, with, I don't know, just absolutely spitballing here, best for Bad Bunch. So get it first, get it out of the way, or get it last, and maybe no one will ever hear it. But yeah, it definitely, for me, improves after that first song. That first song for me is pretty bland, pretty boring. Like I say, the vocals are do my nothing, and it's from the Failsafe track 2. I've got some issues with the last song though, Mirrors.
It's again overlong. It feels a bit disjointed. Not quite sure they really knew what they were doing with it. It might have just been again a
yes, that's nail on the head there. They didn't know what they were doing with it. That is an amazing 3.5 minute song.
Why make it 7 minutes and 44 seconds?
Great question. Why did they make it?
The album is laboured enough. It's a 49-minute album. You could probably take at least 30 seconds off each one of these songs.
You could
30 seconds to a minute off each one.
Yeah.
And okay, you've got the sort of semi-interlude intro of Was That Something Was Always Missing, but It Was Never You.
Yeah, it does have a bit of that's like the down, 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 down.
And it's like,
down.
Okay, an interlude track. Because lovely. And then it goes into a song. It's like, oh shit, I was expecting a next track sort of moment. Just 1 minute, 1.5 minute interlude into a song. Could have been, there we go, bump the track numbers up, guys. Missed the trick there.
You saying that they didn't, did they know what they were doing with that song? Great question, because after the beatdown, so you have that, we talked about this over Messenger, you have that sort of the panning like chugs, like the chun 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 chun. So you've got the pan, and then it goes into that beatdown, and then that's when it just goes into like 3 or 4 individual parts. You could maybe call it prog, how it all sort of goes through from one part to the next part to the next part, but it just sounds disconnected. It doesn't sound like it's actually part of that song. It sounds like 3 sections of 3 different songs just mashed together after what was. This is the song I messaged you on to say, oh hey, this has got some Every Time I Die vibes. Now I went back through the album a few times, never really got that again. But definitely listen to Mirrors. There's some of the guitar work, some of the things that Ryan Morgan and Stuart Ross are doing there definitely give me some Eated vibes. But nowhere else really on the album. I'm not going to say these guys remind me of Every Time I Die. But yeah, Mirrors was just a weird one for me because I thought a really great 3.5, 4 minutes there, and then like you say, just some weird stuff after.
Yeah, and it's something to say. I think obviously the strengths of the band. Each band member, I think, is bringing something. I know you've maybe not the biggest fan of Carl's vocals, but I think his lyrics are quite good.
Mm-hmm.
Given, we would we'll compare it to the recent Bad Bunch of Back to the Bullet for My Valentine's, The Poison.
Well,
bringing that back up.
We're really shit on those guys, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with
that. There's a level of lyrics that I feel they're a bit more exploratory and not as on the nose, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
They're not perfect, but I think he's a great lyricist. The guitarists are beyond able. They are really talented and able to really write some multi-layered, string parts that just sit beautifully over this hardcore heavy element. I think is a real nice juxtaposition to have this brutal crushing chun and then these really light feathery sort of moments is something that they really pull off well, and the drums are written well and recorded like shit on this album. I can't escape that.
No, it's the first thing I really picked up on the album that I didn't know if it was me because I was listening to it almost exclusively through headphones. I didn't really have access to a different system to listen to this. But was it that the toms weren't really forward in the mix, or was it that the cymbals were way too forward in the mix? Like, there is a bit of a, for me anyway, there was a bit of a weird mixing of the drums. I thought everything, just when I maybe focused a bit too hard on the drums, everything else just seemed really far forward. So, is it that they were a bit back? But yeah, the drums are a weird one in this. But I find myself, given that I did mostly listen to it on headphones, like I agree with everything you're saying. There are some really good, intricate, nice moments in the guitars here. One or two moments I thought, the bass isn't really doing much here. But then there are bass moments as well that come through in these songs. One thing that did really get me though was equally, there's a few moments where they just sort of lose themselves. I think it's mostly within Mirrors. There's just a couple of moments where bass and both guitars are doing different things, and it just all sounded a bit muddled and didn't really work as well as a lot of the other moments on the album.
Yep, and to its fault, and they clearly got me in as a fan back in 2006 when this came out. It was what I wanted to hear at the time. Mm-hmm. If I'd listened to your likes of your Parkway Drives, Bleeding Through, and then you hear this, you've got that vocal tone. I think he's got a very similar vocal tone to Winston from Parkway Drive. And to have that, but with these more intricate, experimental sort of elements on the side, it was clearly what I wanted to hear at the time. And it's interesting the journey that it's taken me on musically. And this is possibly the reason why I perhaps moved away from Misery Signals, is that other bands were able to not only copy it, but then also take it to the next level, take it up a notch, and do something more interesting with that formula. Bands that come to mind that really took the torch or the mantle, whichever you want to call it, a band like The Ghost Inside.
Oh, 100%. That is something I meant to say. Vocally, very similar to The Ghost Inside. I think I maybe just preferred the way they did it a bit better. But yeah, 100%.
And then musically, bands like Counterparts. If you listen to their go from their 2010 album, I was listening to it just the other day, because they've released a new song. Hint for what are we listening to? But when they released their album about 2010, And it felt to me like they picked up the torch that by 2010 Misery Signals had effectively walked away from, and they picked that up and they were making albums that were heavier, faster. That was one of my big sort of criticisms for Mirrors. I think it's too slow. And the counterparts were coming in and bringing that hardcore element a bit more, putting a bit more into that, making it faster. Ghost Inside as well, they were making it tight. And, you know, if you look at the first two Ghost Inside albums that I listened to, was it the Fury of the Fallen Ones and then Returners? Those were absolute fucking crucial albums in the genre, and still to this day could hold a candle, could really set themselves apart. Even though they were all within the same genre, I think they did enough to make themselves stand out and then eventually take on the role as being the better band, I think.
Yeah, it was Fury and the Fallen Ones is where I sort of found them, and admittedly, pretty much the only album I really listened to for the Ghost Inside. I knew they always stuck around. I've not listened to them in so long, so it's a bit shit for me to try and go back and remember this. But I want to say there was a bit of a change from maybe Fury and the Fallen Ones to the next album. And I sort of just dropped off that instantly. I was like, these guys, hindsight's 2020. For me at the time, I was like, these guys aren't really much. I don't really see these guys doing very much. Lo and behold, became fucking a pretty big band until certain issues arose.
And from there, my personal tastes actually got a bit lighter, I think, is one way to put it. I ended up listening to a band that really left an impression on me we're into about 2010 at this point. A UK band called More Than Life. And I think that's a bit of a stretch. Just to stretch from Misery Signals to More Than Life is a leap. But then when I listened to them the other day side by side, I was like, wow, there's some characteristics that they've got. They're doing it, they're lighter, they're even more melodic. It's about as melodic hardcore as you can get a band of More Than Life. Really super emotional lyrics, but really, again, well textured, well layered guitars, almost indie, like to that shift. And I would, any listener at home, any listener at work, on the bus or whatever, who's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Go and listen to the 2012 album, Love Let Me Go, and listen to a lighter Misery Signals song, maybe from Controller. Listen like Weight of the World or something.
Yeah.
Go from Weight of the World into Scarlet Skyline by More Than Life. And there's similarities, there's characteristics that really took me on the journey. And this is where I think I have to really thank Misery Signals for the inspiration of what they've given to my listening experience, because from More Than Life onwards, I can, draw a straight line, because I'll still listen to them today. Bands like Defeater, bands like the other hardcore bands that I ended up getting into after 2010. That's what direction I went into, and I think Misery Signals played a big part in what I like today.
So let's take it back a little bit then. 2006, Lav. How did you find Misery Signals, or what got you into the band in the first place? Other than, you heard them, you liked them, right? How were you introduced to the band?
I can only think it must have been through MySpace. I don't have a memory of there being like a moment or a person who said, go and listen to this band. I just remember listening to them, hearing them. It must have been the release. I feel it is the release of Mirrors, and I think they put the song The Failsafe up. Okay. And if I start looking at it, they were friends with Fall Out Boy, they were friends with Comeback Kid.
Yeah.
It's very likely another band had posted something on their bulletin board back on MySpace to sort of nudge me in that direction. And I gave it a shot, and I was like, holy fuck, this is great.
No, fair play.
I then couldn't get the album on CD, but I did manage to pick up the previous album of Malice and Magnum Heart, and I still have that on CD to this day. and that has one of my favourite Misery Signals songs on it called 5 Years, which is again just massive nostalgia number. Me and a friend of mine at the time, we used to sing that at each other. You know, blood is forever, love is forever.
Oh,
What a breakdown.
you boys. You
Big posy moments. Big posy moments.
Posy, oh, good times, man. Fair. So, like, I never... This is the thing. I said it at the top of the episode. I was always aware of them, but I never listened to them. That I'm aware of. I feel like I did, but I must have just crossed the names with, I don't know, Darkest Hour or Haste the Day or someone like that. I think, you know, it's, with all due respect to Misery Signals, I think it's easy to lose those bands into one another. They're quite, for me at least, because I'm not someone who got into too much detail with either, quite interchangeable. You could give me a Misery Signal songs, you can give me a Haste the Day, you know, you can give me a whatever, and I'll be like, is this the same band? Because they're definitely of the same genre, they're definitely of the same time, they're definitely of the same sound. Even going back as far as Chimera, I got some early Chimera vibes off of that first song. Face Yourself, because honestly, the first couple minutes of listening to that song, I was like, oh no, this is not going to be good. And lo and behold, Mirrors is produced by Ben Schigel.
Yes, it is.
Schigel, who also produced a lot for Chimera.
Yeah, it was a big part of Chimera's production. I hadn't drawn a line between the two. I'd never connected the dots on them. I would never have put Chimera and Misery Signals in the same sentence. But yeah, when listening to the album, yeah, there's moments now that it's same when you mentioned the Every Time I Die sort of link. I was like, I've never ever thought of that before.
Yeah.
Until now, and you know what? And then hindsight, I looked at the times I've seen Misery Signals live, and the bands that they were supporting, and one of them was Architects, and I would say 2009 Architects is pretty close to what became maybe later Every Time I Die, in the sense that it's just faster, more brash, and a bit more bouncy. I think the later Architects really grew into themselves, but I think they took a lot from what Misery Signals were doing. And it's so funny, Architects, if you listen to really early Architects, it's nigh on technical death metal.
Yeah, we've got a really sordid backstory with Architects, though. Like, over years, the both of us have been so in and so out of that band over their back catalogue. It's ridiculous, and that's going to be one hell of an episode when we get there.
It's going to be a toughie, because that is a band that right now, as of talking, I'm out.
Same.
I'm out.
I'm out hard.
But I was out here and now. I was out Daybreaker. Lost Together.
Found Forever. Something like that.
All Our Gods Are Abandoned Us, fucking in there like swimwear.
Yeah.
And then Holy Hell, we're back to this, and then fucking whatever that last one's, I don't even know what it's called.
No, I let's not get too much into it, but we differ on certain albums, but
sure.
Yes, we have both been in and out at different times and are currently both out, and it's difficult, but I sort of see what you're saying. Like, had Misery Signals maybe done a bit more clean, like managed some of their own clean stuff, they could have been a bit more what Architects sort of became.
Yeah, and they've got the chops. They've got the guitar virtuoso chops. They're in there. You take those elements and you put Sam Carter's vocals on top of them, and you've got a much more accessible package that could be more attainable. And I think Misery Signals, I saw them supporting Architects in 2009 in Edinburgh, and that was a great show. I was super pleased to have at the time, two of my most favourite bands playing together in the city I live in was brilliant. The other times I've seen Misery Signals supporting Emmure and August Burns Red.
Wow.
Fucking 180. Total flip side.
Yeah.
You go from Architects to Emmure. Emmure were, at that time that was their Respect Issue album release sort of cycle.
August Burns Red for me are another one of those bands that sort of fit in to this as like
Definitely.
basically the same band.
Yes, and August Burns Red, they had a good couple of albums. You've got your Thrill Seeker and Messengers. They are fantastic albums, and I'm probably going to have to talk about them at some stage, but may as well talk about them now because this was what I was listening to.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, again, highly proficient, more progressive, almost like Protest the Hero, but without the strong vocals, I think, was what was holding them back. Because again, vocally, August Burns Red are a bit meh.
Bland,
I guess, given the description that you've given for Carl there, I'd say they've got pretty similar sort of monotone-ish vocals, and they could benefit from something different to happen.
To say the last couple of bands, I think it's great that we've sort of came so far now because we can start to get referential as to where we were, self-referential as to where we are or where we were listening to this. 2006, you're listening to Norma Jean and this. 2006, I was listening to Raunchy and Protest the Hero. Vocally, two different groups, two different styles. So yeah, it just sort of shows why I was not picking these sort of bands up, because not to tar them with the same brush, but each band has its own personality and its own good and bad things. But black and white from the stuff that I was listening to at the time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think what's interesting, that we listen to heavy music. I would say that we have very unique journeys,
mm-hmm.
but there was always someone that you didn't listen to. But I know that you listened to Architects a little bit after I might have started listening to them, so
yeah.
Perhaps you might not have been in the same sort of space as I was with Misery Signals in 2006.
No, fair.
And the other one that was supporting actually was one I mentioned earlier, as I got the album mixed up earlier. I saw them supporting All That Remains and Textures.
Right.
Now, Textures, incredibly progressive metal band. Very much like Between the Bird and Me meets sort of the Human Abstract, I would say, is sort of the way I would go with them, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, kind of. Okay.
And that was at a really interesting venue. I've only ever been, I'm sure I've been to 2 gigs there, but this may have been the 1 gig. It was at the Exchange in Edinburgh. Now, this was such a short-lived venue.
I know, yeah, where was this?
It's on Grove Street. It was like, I am absolutely fucking positive. It's basically like 2 doors down from the pizza pool place.
Really?
Yes.
The Exchange. I do know this.
And I've never been to another gig there. They had this one show. It was incredible. About 9 people turned up, and it was one of the best gigs I've been to in Edinburgh. It was just, there was like about 9 of us. Like I say, everyone knew each other because we were all just part of the same scene. And yeah, we just got to 2-step our hearts out to All That Remains and Misery Signals. And I'm sure, to this day, I am sure Eternal Lord with Ed Butcher played that show. But it's not on any Setlist FM site I can find. I can't confirm it, but I am positive I saw Eternal Lord with Ed Butcher. Absolutely positive.
That does ring many a bell. The Exchange, Edinburgh, but for the life of me, can't really remember it either. It'll probably flash back to me at some point in my life. But right, so I think it's fair to say we both like this album. It's there's some things we didn't like. a lot of things we do like. So what are your sort of standout tracks on this album? I've got a few. There's definitely a couple here I was pleasantly surprised to finally sort of, give a few listens and hear some more things within the songs. So what was some of your standout moments on Mirrors?
I've already mentioned the Failsafe. I think is a great opening track.
Yep.
I think it's got some nice meandering moments and it keeps sort of things up and
meandering in a good way.
In a good way, yeah. It takes you on a nice journey around what and who Misery Signals are, as it leads with that opening sort of guitar line, and then it sort of speeds up later through the song. The other song you sent this one to me. Something Was Always Missing, but it was never you. I mentioned it. Yes, it has that interlude sort of section for the first minute, and then it kicks in.
Yeah,
great song. I think that's one of their stronger songs on the album. But my favorite song on the whole album is Anchor.
Yes,
that one absolutely takes me right back. I'm in 2006. I'm listening to this. I'm singing it with my friends. We are enjoying this and just absolutely loving this song because I think lyrically it is the strongest on the album, and it's one you can really sing along to and belt out if you know the words.
Yeah, he seems pretty keen on that one and the sort of the message behind that one, and sort of what someone being there to support you, but then also potentially holding you back at the same time.
Yeah, nice little metaphor.
Yeah,
like an anchor.
Like an anchor. Yeah,
like an anchor.
No, that's cool. Totally agree with you on track 6. Something Was Always Missing, but it was never you. That was a bit of a turning point in the album for me to be like, no, okay, there's something here to listen to, and I need to give this a bit more attention. I was still a bit stunned from track 1. Just really can't emphasize enough how much that was like ready to throw me away from this album. Had track 2 been the same, I'd have been like, oh crap, this is nonsense. But track 6 sort of made me sort of stand up because I think and listen, because I think it is quite different. It's got a groove to it. It's got a really fucking cool groove to it. I think we referenced it earlier. That dan 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 dan. Pretty standard rhythm these days, but they're doing it pretty well there. And then it sort of takes you back to the track before that, One Day I'll Stay Home. And I only realised, reading up on this recently, did not pick up when I heard it, but now that I've heard it, I get it straight away. You mentioned them earlier, your friend's Fall Out Boy, Patrick Stump,
yeah,
does the clean vocals in the verse for One Day I'll Stay Home. And now that I hear it, I'm like, fuck yeah, that's great. I kind of wish it was them. I kind of wish it was them doing the clean vocal and having the confidence to experiment with that. I don't know if they do clean vocals after this. I don't just get boners for clean vocals. But like One Day I'll Stay Home, I thought was pretty cool. Track 6, something was.
It stands out.
Yeah.
It stands out as a moment on the album. I agree with that because it is the first time and only time that the vocals really do change in a. And
it's because it's someone else.
It helps.
But then, so I mentioned it earlier. Mirrors. I do genuinely love the first three, might even only be 2.5, 3 minutes of that song. I think that's a really great outing. And, Give Me Every Time I Die vibes. I think it's really great work from the guitarists there. It's just, that was a really fun song, but then it just sort of gets lost in itself and goes places, and I'm a bit like, why are we here? I don't know what this is doing. Why are we here?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Most other songs I enjoyed, but they were, as we rate it, what songs made me look at my phone? And it was track 5, 6, and 11. And I also enjoyed Anchors, but I knew that was your baby.
I think as a whole, going back to it, I'd probably give it maybe a 7 in my own sort of nostalgic sort of tones. I didn't hate it. I almost did. I had to battle through to get to the good stuff. And then once you've gone through it, it feels a lot more palatable and something I can sort of give a chance to. And I would say that the follow-up album, helped significantly by the producer, has to have been.
Mm-hmm.
Controller is the stronger album. It has catchy songs, it has memorable hooks, it's got just a better pacing, better speed, it's got better purpose behind it. I find Mirrors is a bit laboured. It's a little bit slow in spots. And yeah, as I said before, they struggled to write a fucking intro. Like, I just couldn't get into some songs. I got about, the first 30, 40 seconds into a song, I was like, next.
With the exception of track 6. That
I would
that
say
thing you
so,
thought
yeah.
was an interlude. But yeah, no, fair play.
They fair enough. They wanted to do something a bit more softer and more sort of, leads you in and builds up. I get that. But right now in my head, I've got a song from Controller still stuck in my head. And I've yet to have that sort of pushed aside by anything from Mirrors, unfortunately. As good as Mirrors was at the time when I first heard it in 2006, they did better. And that's the album I would highly recommend anyone listen to if you've never listened to Misery Signals before.
Not this album that we're covering.
That again, same as with Norma Jean.
Yeah.
Wrong album.
From what you're saying, I'd probably be tempted to listen to the next album. Generally, off of the back of this, I did find some good stuff on it, so I might go back and check out Controller just to see what it's all about. Because if it's a step up from this, then I would expect it to be pretty good. Because this is a good album. This is fun, and I said earlier, had I found this in 2006, it might not be anything that would have blown me away. I still would have been mighty impressed by it. I still would have stuck with As I Lay Dying, but I still probably would have got this into circulation, and I maybe would have stuck for them a little bit longer. And it's just hard to say, however many years later, 16 years later, would this have completely influenced me and changed my perspective? I don't know, but it was good. And once I got there, it was good. It did take me that listen or two, got to get past that first track, and I really stuck with it. It's just fun to see Patrick Stump on it. I always enjoy seeing like weird crossovers like that. Like the pop punk band on the metalcore album, or the I'm sure Sam Carter does features on a Uniate 6 song.
Very likely.
I'm sure he does. I'm almost positive he does. In fact, I'm going to double check that.
Yeah, and Bring Me the Horizon, we've brought them up a couple of times. A band that changes their sound every album for the better. Well, for they're good. They've clearly done well from it and preempted any sort of changes in the music industry and made a different album each time. I would say Misery Signals maybe haven't. It's probably to their fault. Is they made the same style of music, and I personally, after Controller, because there was such a gap between Controller and Absent Light, I want to call it.
What, 2008 to 2013, I think?
Yeah, between that, a lot had changed for me. That was 5 years where my music tastes went through the fucking dishwasher. Like, they came out a different shade with fresh scratches on it. Like, there was a big shift in my listening habits between those two dates.
No, totally. Same.
So yeah, by the time Absent Light came out, it left no impression on me whatsoever.
It does not look as if Sam Carter was on a Uniate 6 album, but Winston Duke and Ollie Sykes were. So, that's the point I was trying to make, was, it always makes me laugh, or I always like seeing the crossover between, like, pop punk bands and metal bands, whatever, and that's, Patrick Stamp on this album, Mirrors by Misery Signals, because that's the episode we're doing.
Oh, so it was.
Will we wrap this up?
Yeah, this is it's a really important album for anyone who listens today to bands like Counterparts, or who listen to bands like The Ghost Inside, and you've never listened, and those who listen to Architects today, who are interested in Architect's back catalogue, I would make a detour and take a minute to listen to Misery Signals. There is a lot to be liked, and I think you would enjoy it. If you don't quite get into Mirrors in the first listen through, I don't think either of us are going to blame you. Give Controller a try otherwise, as it's the most good.
Yeah. I like this album. I can see why you like this album. I'm not particularly upset that I missed it, 18, 16 years ago. That's fine. It was an enjoyable listen. Thanks for bringing it to the pod. I can finally say I've now heard Misery Signals.
Put your little scout badge on you.
Totally. Misery Signals. Weird name, though. We didn't really talk about that. Misery Signals? What does that even mean? Like, signals of misery? Misery signals? Like, that's a signal of you being miserable?
Never really thought about it, to be honest. The previous band name was Seven Angels, Seven Plagues.
Shite names.
Shite
names all round.
I mean, it's the early 2000s hardcore scene. I mean, there was worse out there.
I mean, at this time, to be fair, I was in a band called Massacre on the Fjords.
So you were.
Which, obviously, is a fucking amazing name.
My band, I didn't start Carve the Future until 2008. Was it? Yeah, about then.
Did your logo look like, the roots of a tree?
No, we didn't go down that route. No. We went down the whole...
Did go down that route, did you?
Just straight up fucking stamp.
Right. Oh, Times New Roman.
Not quite Times New Roman, but in that sort of uninspired hardcore band.
Anyway,
what are you listening to?
Other than Misery Signals, as we open that line up with every time. Last week, I spoke about a band called Wake. So I gave their discography a whirl. And
yes.
Yep, 10 out of 10. That's my band of the year, by the way. I will be very excited for their releases as and when their new album comes out this year. I also listened to a new track that was released by Counterparts, as we've spoken about. I think it's a fucking cracker. I think that ticks a lot of boxes for those Counterparts fans who've been waiting for a new album. For those who don't know, Counterparts singer Brendan, he's also in a band called End. And End are fucking incredible. Like, they are balls, fucking staple your balls to the wall, absolute heavy, ear-bleeding stuff. And then he's got Counterparts, where he sort of sings in the same way, but it's got nice widdly-widdly parts over it.
Widdly-widdly, indeed.
And the other band I listened to... I don't know, I listened to quite a lot of Misery Signals, actually. I went through the back catalogue a bit, so I listened to Malice and Magnum Heart, which was before Mirrors, and Controller, which came out after Mirrors. And three really good albums across their discography there. What about you?
Nice. Similarly to yourself, I listened to Wake's 2020 album Devouring Ruin. I'm not going to lie, it lost me a bit. It lost me a bit. I was just... Yeah, it was just so much of the same. I maybe just wasn't in the right place to listen to it. I was doing other things. I sort of had it on in the background. I just sort of found myself a little bit, kind of coming in and out of it. And maybe that's my fault. Just not really, didn't grab me as much as that sort of single Swallow the Light, which I thought was pretty impressive. As I sort of alluded to at the top of the episode, I was out of the country for a week on a cheeky little holiday. So you would have thought I listened to loads of music. I didn't. I listened to Misery Signals. I listened to a playlist that I made a couple of months ago for, entertaining some friends, and I was like, fucking hell, this playlist is amazing. Quite a lot of our influences on that, to be honest. Sort of reminded myself how good Satellite by POD was.
Oh, cracker.
A lot of our favourite album of the pod is Jimmy Eat World. So maybe not the song Satellite, but Boom. Boom's a jam.
Boom, Youth of the Nation. Alive,
Yeah.
crackers.
Yeah, stuff like that. A few sort of new synthwave pop bands that I listened to and stuff like that. That was all groovy.
Oh, that's one I forgot to mention. There was a band, a pop punk band, No Pressure. They released their new album. It's 22 minutes long, and it's another one of those albums. It sounds like it's released in 2003. It's fucking great.
Nice.
It's the singer from The Story So Far. It's his side project. So any fans of The Story So Far, any fans of early Blink-182, get onto that album. It's great. Great. I also actually listened to The Midnight. It was a nice sunny day, you know.
Who doesn't love the Midnight? That's one of the synth pop bands I listen to.
Yeah.
I've seen the Midnight. They are one of my favourite bands. Like I do fucking love the Midnight.
Yeah, that sax just hooks me in every time.
That definitely turned a few people off if they hadn't gone already. So while I was on my Holly Bobs, I rediscovered some comics.
Okay.
So I like to think of myself as I'm a light reader of comics. I generally go through binges of reading. It's been a while since I've really gotten into some comics, but maybe last year or whatever, I was recommended a few books that I've enjoyed in the past. I'll openly admit I'm mostly just a Marvel reader. I have a comic themed sleeve of a certain graphic novel, The Watchmen, for obviously people not aware. But I've sort of, I don't know if I've said on the pod before, but like my sort of interest in comics started a very long time ago by just ordering Predator books off of eBay.
Okay.
You know, $2.99 and you get some like Dark Horse Predator graphic novels. Anyway, because I've not been listening too much, I have been reading a lot of Immortal Hulk. And this is what I'm trying to get the more information on. It's a run from 2018 to 2021. I've sort of been reading the omnibuses, so I've just got it on the digital app. Book 1, 2, and 3. I've finished book 2, and I've nearly finished book 3, and I've got book 4 to read. And holy shit balls! Like, if there's maybe people out there listening and they're like, "Oh, Marvel, they're not really comics, they're shit," blah blah blah. Read Immortal Hulk. Hulk's always been one of my favourite, take it back to Planet Hulk and World War Hulk and stuff like that. That's where I sort of came onto Hulk books and stuff. But like, Jesus, this has been like really dark, man. Like really, really getting into the layers of like, split personalities and sort of how like abuse as a child can manifest in an adult and stuff like that. Because essentially that's what they've made the Hulk in these sort of books, is that there's different personalities of Hulks. There's different Hulks that come out of Banner because of the abuse he received as a child.
Wait, are you talking about Hulk or are you talking about Moon Knight?
Hulk. This one's called Immortal Hulk. So
that you've just described Moon Knight.
Now that I've said it out loud and you've said it back to me, yeah. But like these are books.
Yeah, you've just described Moon Knight to me. Marvel, you've run out of ideas officially.
Well, these were books that were written in 2018, so somewhat predates the show, and I don't know what the Moon Knight books are about. But it just, there's decapitations and people getting eaten, and like the Hulk's skin getting melted off, and like his dad exists in a realm of hell and stuff like that. Like, that might be a spoiler for one of the books. Anyway, yeah, it's just been a really heavy, like, fucked up read. I've been loving it. I have genuinely been loving it. There was a screenshot I sent to one of my friends, and he was like, the Hulk's supposed to be a hero, right? He's supposed to be one of the good guys. He's supposed to be one of the Avengers, but in the comics, he's very much a grey. He's not the good guy anymore. Like, it's because he's so destructive and powerful. Like, they've tried to get rid of him so many times, and they're like, you can't contain the Hulk, he's a liability, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, but at the end of the day, he's always wanted to do the right thing and defend the Earth. But in this book, he's like, nah, I'm pretty much done with humanity. You guys are killing this planet, so, maybe we just need to hit the reset button, and I am the reset button.
Yeah.
So you're like, fucking,
Wow.
yes, Hulk.
Here
Yes!
comes the Doomslayer. Nice.
Let's fucking do this shit. So, other than what you absolutely accurately pinpointed as Moon Knight, the TV show, I've just really enjoyed reading this book, or these books, and it's something I've not really shared with on the podcast before, because it's admittedly it's been months, even a year or two, since I've really sort of dug into any sort of graphic novels. But that, in lieu of what have I been listening to, what I've been reading is Immortal Hulk.
It's great that you mentioned some comics there. We've got a friend of mine who I'd love to get onto the podcast one day. He writes comic books.
Yeah.
He does a series called Killtopia, which is like a cyberpunk graphic novel series set in future Japan, where heavily armed wreckers are paid to hunt rogue mechs for money. Sort of like Running Man.
Is that
Running Man.
is that Roadrunner? Not Roadrunner. Is that Blade Runner?
It's almost
Is that Roadrunner? Blade Runner. Oh, what a loser!
it's Blade Runner meets Running Man sort of
Yeah,
thing.
I'm absolutely no way trying to take the piss out of the guy, but that's
I would give it a shout for anyone who's interested, and I'd love to get Dave on. He'd love to come on and talk about Architects of Hope. But yes, we have a special episode coming next week, all listeners.
We do have a special episode. We've been hinting at it. It's one we've been wanting to do for a while. We've got a guest lined up. It's about time we bloody well ripped the plaster off and attempt to cover.
Attempt is a good word. Is the right description, because we're gonna.
We'll never do it justice.
We won't.
Maybe with our guest. Maybe our guest will help us with some perspective. We'll never do it justice, but we're gonna do the 9. We're gonna do Slipknot.
Because I'm glad you said Slipknot, because people might think we're going to talk about Ice Nine Kills. Yes, we're going to talk about Slipknot.
Robbie's coming back for them.
Definitely. Yeah, we're gonna go through the whole damn discography from.
Why not?
We can have a smattering of Mate, Feed, Kill, Repeat, right through to We Are Not Your Kind. And
yes,
there was even a song just released about a year ago, no, about a few months ago, wasn't there? The Cam.
Yeah. What was that?
Just a sort of one-off little single that they just threw in for good measure, just to remind people that they're still going. They've had some lineup changes.
The Campbelltown Rag.
That's it, Campbelltown Rag. So that they've had some lineup changes. They've had some tragedies beset the band, and some management decisions, but they are still Slipknot, and I think we need to talk about them, because fuck me, 16-year-old, 15-year-old me got their mind blown apart into smithereens the first time I heard Slipknot. It was something else.
I have only... That's not fair to say only. What I was going to say there was, I have only... My appreciation for the band has only ever grown. That's not true. There was a dip over a certain album.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody had the same dip.
We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about that. But yeah, even as an adult, I feel like I appreciate the band more than what I did as a teen.
Oh, 100%. As much as they blew my face off in my teens, as an adult, I have the utmost respect for what they were doing at that time, and now, and they still do it, and they still continue to do. 25 years later, they're still smashing it out of the park. And,
yeah, very much so.
And yeah, I can't wait. I cannot wait to talk about them. We've got a special guest on as well. Hopefully they'll keep us in check. They're going to bring out a new, fresh perspective. So you're going to hear a different voice from our dulcet tones. Yeah.
I'm not even entirely sure if our guest is a 30-something, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah, we'll pass. He's got a good experience
We'll do. We'll welcome exceptions.
But yeah, can't wait till next week now.
Absolutely. So by all means, Lav, take us home.
Thank you very much for listening. We have been Alive or Just Blethering. Do reach out on our socials at AOGB Podcast on Instagram, Twitter. I have recently resumed the YouTube videos, so if you are listening to this on YouTube, drop us a like, drop us a comment, subscribe, and also send us an email, eogb.podcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you if you've got something more to say. But yes, thank you very much for listening. Next week, just Slipknot.
Fucking Slipknot. Fucking
Slipknot. Just Slipknot. You know what doesn't work? You know how you can do like the Slayer thing, like people that like Slayer.
no.
There isn't like a Slipknot thing.
Maggots.
You just want to see a guy across the street in a Slipknot top and be like Slipknot. Good night.